So today we begin our exploration and really the development of our emotional intelligence. Studies have shown, as I've mentioned before, that emotional intelligence is the single most factor in determining our success in life. It's not our intelligence, it's not our education, it's not our field, but it's how well do we manage the inner reality? How much do we manage our feelings, and how much we can handle stress, our feelings. We're not taught this in school. So most of us go through life having certain emotions getting triggered and not really knowing how to deal with them. Think about when you were back, you were 3, 4 years old, and something happened and you became very much upset, and you didn't really have the skills to cope with the emotion that was rising. So we cope with upsetting, cutting feelings mostly by repressing them. We develop coping skills, and we use those same skills as teenagers, as adults, and we begin to form patterns, some scars based on these old ways of reacting, and these can be very unproductive ways of coping with difficult feelings. So for example, when we become an adult, some small thing can happen and we can become triggered. We can become completely upset over something that was really small. Why? Because growing up, we hadn't learned how to deal with that particular feeling, and it got stuffed. We repressed it, and the energy began to get stored within us and gradually build itself till at a certain point we would simply explode. So as we live our life, in our practice, we want to learn how to feel the feelings and experience them completely in the moment that they're happening. And if, for example, we have some experience that is so troubling that we can't experience it in the moment, we have the opportunity to go back and look at that energy and fully experience it and fully digest it. In the tradition of Kashmir Shaivism, they talk about hatapaka and alamgrasa. So hatapaka is being able to fully experience any experience, digest it completely in the moment, in one gulp, one bite, so to speak. If, however, we are too busy or incapable of really dealing with intense emotion in the moment, then we have a chance to go back and really look at it. And what this practice involves is sitting down quietly, particularly when we get triggered. And I had an experience in Italy when I was there. I was leading a retreat, and as I was leaving the meditation room and going back to my apartment across the street, there was a car was coming, and it almost hit me. It was really a close call. I had to dive out of the way to prevent myself from being hit by it, and I landed on the curb and scraped my knees, and I was really hurting, but I was upset. I started immediately telling myself a story. Oh, that person almost killed me, and every time I would have those thoughts, there would be a cascade of chemicals creating a reaction in my body. But I just taught a class on heart math and alamgrasa and feeling the feelings, so I thought, okay, this is an opportunity for me to practice it. So I sat on the curb, closed my eyes, and just noticed the feelings. And I began to feel them. Okay, what am I feeling in this moment? I'm feeling a contraction in my belly. I feel a little bit upset, a little bit sick in the stomach. I feel a contraction. I looked closely at the experiences. It feels like my heart is closed. It feels like there's energy on my chest. My heart's racing. My breath is. And I looked at my experience and I stayed with the experience. And I was vigilant not to tell myself a story. So if I had sat on the curb and told my story, that guy almost killed me, I would have been generating more more chemicals, giving more fuel to the fire that would have kept the experience going, could have gone all day long. But looking at the feelings, digesting them, being with the feeling, not being afraid to look away, within 90 seconds the feeling was completely gone. So this is a practice that you can do. Looking at the experience in the moment, digesting it fully. And if for some reason you're too busy to do it at the time, that there'll be a residue of that experience, and you can sit in your room, recall the experience, tell yourself the story, allow the feeling to arise, and then fully digest it. So in this way we can digest the samskara, the impression of the experience in the moment, and also as we go deeper and deeper, any related experiences in our past life that we may not have processed fully and completely. This is a way that we can process those feelings. Without that, we can continue to carry those feelings with us, and these feelings become a filter, a lens through which we see the world. And it affects the way we see the world, the way we perceive things. So these ways that we cope with emotions and feelings becomes a habit, and these habits shape our character, and the character shapes our destiny. There's a saying in the West that as a man thinketh, so he becomes. So these patterns shape our destiny, shape our karma. As we learn to meditate deeply, we begin to use the same point of view, the same practices that we do in meditation in our daily life. I like to refer to meditation as a dress rehearsal for the big show, the dress rehearsal for life. So everything that we do and we meditate, we can apply that in our life. So for example, if I'm meditating and a thought comes passing through, let's say a negative thought passes into my consciousness, I no longer have to believe it. I no longer have to engage with it. I can let the thought just simply pass through and remain centered. So we learn to become vigilant, guarding our thoughts. We learn not to judge. We learn not to criticize, not to find fault in other people, not to have attack thoughts. These thoughts drag us down. We learn how to forgive. If someone has wronged us in some way, for our own sake, we let it go. My father taught me this lesson. I was working with him as a young man, and we were in the oil business, and we were drilling wells. My father was raising money on Wall Street, and we would pay the drillers to drill the wells for us. And this was go-go times. There was lots of activity, lots of people investing money, and we paid for the wells on behalf of our client, and there was a man who took the money and spent it, who was drilling the wells, and spent the money on jets and fancy clothes and cars and all sorts, and ended up not drilling the wells. This was a very dangerous situation for my father, because he could have been criminally charged for taking money and not drilling the wells. Anyway, this man this driller was convicted of fraud and spent his time in jail. Spent almost 10 years in jail. I was with my father the night that this man was released from prison. We were sitting in a restaurant. We were at the bar at the restaurant, and Fast Eddie was his name, came walking through the door. And I was immediately on high alert, watching to see how my father would react. Instead of my father getting upset, he called Eddie over. He said, "Let me buy you a drink. Come, sit down." No harsh words, no upset feelings. I was really impressed. And I actually questioned my father at the end of the experience. I said, "Dad, you almost went to jail because of a misdeed that this fellow did. Why are you buying a drink?" And he said to me something that really struck me. He said, you know what? He paid the price. He went to prison, and he's going to be in this restaurant for the rest of his life. He's going to be here. We're going to see him. I need to forgive him and forget all of that, because when he comes in, for my sake, I don't want to have to hide. I don't want to have to look away. You know, when we have bad feelings about somebody, we're the ones who suffer, not them. So for our own sake, we learn how to forgive and forget. We don't judge other people. I remember my teacher, Muktananda, one time telling me, he said, don't find faults. Don't judge people. Don't even find faults. In fact, he looked at me when he said that. He said, don't even see faults. See God in everyone. And I remember shortly thereafter, I was living in the ashram in New York City, on my way to work one day, down on Wall Street. I had my three-piece suit on and my briefcase, and walking through the streets of New York. And they have these kind of wild characters in New York. This fellow was standing up on a soapbox, ranting and raving. He had placards, signs all over, the end is near, etc. And I looked at him, and my first thought is, what a fool, what a fool. But then I remembered my Baba's teachings, don't see faults. I said, this is Shiva. Really seeing consciousness, seeing the divine. But sometimes, we have an inner battle. The voice of the self speaks, and the voice of the ego speaks. So I was engaged in this inner battle between the voice of the self, seeing him as a divine being, seeing him as consciousness, and listening to the voice of the ego. This guy's a fool, this guy's a fool. No, he's divine, everything is consciousness. So for a few minutes I waged this inner battle, and there was a big crowd of people gathered around this guy, and laughing and having a good time, because he really was making a fool of himself. So I thought to myself, for just a minute, I'm going to watch this guy make a fool of himself. So I thought I would indulge. Just at that exact moment, as I had the thought, I stepped right in a pile of dog shit. And I slid, I dropped my briefcase, and I had my beautiful three-piece suit and my briefcase, and all of a sudden there's dog shit everywhere. And I was hopping mad. And the whole crowd that was over there watching him make a fool of himself came and watched me becoming the fool. So I had, in that moment, a great revelation that when I was seeing God, when I was seeing consciousness everywhere, I was uplifted. I felt great. As soon as I saw him as a fool, I was the one who became the fool. So truly we create our reality, that the world is as we see it. Yeah. So whatever consciousness we hold in our mind, that's what manifests outside. There's a classic story in the Vedantic tradition of a man that had a deep-seated fear of snakes. It was late at night, and he needed to return to his home. And he was walking through the forest, and he was fearful of seeing a snake, when suddenly, in his path, there it was. There was a snake so he was filled with terror, went to reach for a stick to beat the snake away. In reality, what he thought was a snake was actually a rope. But because of the fear inside of him, he saw a snake. So he reached for a stick to beat it, and unfortunately the stick was a snake. It bit him, and he died. It's a sad story, but it's just an analogy. But it makes a good point, that whatever we see, this is what the mind does. This is what the senses do. It creates a reality of whatever we hold as true. So we meditate in order to see things as they are. There was a great poet in the West, William Blake, who said, "Cleanse the doors of perception and see things as they are." My Baba, my Muktananda, had his own way of saying that. He said, change the prescription on your lenses. Instead of seeing duality, separation, pain and suffering, change the lens and see consciousness everywhere. Because whatever thoughts we hold in mind, this is what manifests our reality. And meditation is the way to begin to shape our reality, to cleanse the doors. This is the way we remove the inner blocks, by meditating. So when we meditate, the mind becomes quiet. And when there's no content in the mind, the unconscious, the subconscious, the samskaras, the old patterns that we haven't dealt with, the energy that's been stuck, rises into our consciousness. So long as our mind is busy, the old patterns can't fully be processed and digested. So we sit in the silence. And sometimes when we meditate, sometimes we go into bliss. But other times in meditation, we're filled with old thoughts, old memories, old emotions, so that we can sit with them fully and completely. So as we meditate, if you come to the experience of not having a blissful meditation, we can't always have a joyful, ecstatic meditation. Swami Shankarananda says, we can't always have the meditation that we want, but we can always have the meditation that we're having. So if when you're meditating, and this happens to many, many people, painful thoughts, old memories, old emotional traumas come into your awareness, we don't try to repress those. We go to the witness state and we observe it. We witness it. Because bringing the witness to it brings an energy, brings a consciousness that actually digests the experience fully. The stored energy that we haven't experienced from past karmas comes to light, and if we will fully digest them, fully experience them by bringing our fullness of awareness, the blocked energy, the trauma will be released and it will become pure Shakti, pure energy. This is the way we empower ourselves. Abraham Lincoln, the former president of the United States, once said, most folks are about as happy as they make their minds up to be. We look at people throughout history, and happiness doesn't depend on success or wealth. Many people have lots of money, lots of fame, lots of fortune, and yet they're not happy. Others, can be completely happy with very little. When my Baba first came to the West back in 1970, there was a reporter from the New York Times who met him at the airport and said, Muktananda, why are you coming to the West? There's so much poverty in India. Why aren't you there taking care of the people there? And my Baba said, I thought I had seen poverty, but I never saw such poverty until I came to the West. People are unhappy. They have material prosperity, but they haven't found the happiness, the contentment within themselves. And his purpose was to bring meditation so that people could begin to discover that happiness comes from within, has nothing to do from without. So I encourage you to keep meditating. Keep meditating. Meditate on yourself. Honor yourself. Love your own being. Realize that the supreme universal consciousness dwells within you as you, the true you, your own consciousness. You are that. God bless.